Okay, so yeah, today we're going to talk about the Oracle. Special guest is Elmont Edgar, the founder of the Reality Keys, we're going to talk about the Oracle overview and the problems of Oracle, and then centralized Oracle, semi-Oracle, semi-centralized Oracle, and distributed Oracle, and the solution for the problems of Oracles. So yeah, let's start the discussion. First is please introduce about the Oracle overview. Edward-san.
Okay, so the problem that we're trying to solve is if you want to do a transaction in whether it's in Bitcoin or Ethereum or any of those platforms, a transaction that's conditional on something happening in the outside world, right? Something happening in reality. Then you need to get that information from somewhere about what happened, right? So that's true, and pretty much all this kind of smart contracts that you are going to want to set up are going to have some kind of thing happening in the world that they're conditional on, right? So if you want to do for example, a financial derivative, if you want to do, say you want to speculate on, future interest rates or the exchange rate of Bitcoin and the euro or something, or if you want to do, a bet on something happening, if you want to do sponsorship of somebody, or really anything that you might want to make a contract on is going to have some kind of information that has to settle it, and usually that's going to be information that isn't native to the blockchain. So you need to somehow get this information in. So the question is, where's it going to come from? Because we've got these peer-to-peer systems that are designed not to have to trust anybody. So how are we going to do it? So that's the problem that we're trying to solve. Does that so we can start there, or should we talk a little bit about the different solutions that have been suggested?
Yeah, the different solutions for the
Yeah. Okay. So what we do at Reality Keys is really the simplest thing that we can, which is that we find out what happened and we tell you. So that means that you've got to put a certain amount of trust in us to give you the right information. But you can combine that. You're not forced to rely solely on us. So you can combine our information with information from as many other parties as you want, and whether you're using Bitcoin or Ethereum or what, typically you have the ability to combine kind of multiple numbers of keys. So you can say we need 2 out of 3 of these data sources to agree, or 3 out of 5 or whatever. So that's how we handle it. The other kind of thing that you could be doing, the really interesting proposals, are the ones which try to kind of crowdsource that data. Okay, so that you don't have to trust one particular kind of reputed person, but that you try to set up an incentive scheme so that a lot of different people will provide that information, and hopefully they'll provide the right information. So I think one interesting example, which isn't kind of described exactly as an oracle, but which kind of solves this problem, is Nubits. So what they do is they're trying to provide a currency with a steady exchange rate, so that instead of something like Bitcoin where the exchange rate goes all over the place, you can make a contract or a plan in dollars, and you'll know that they'll be worth the same amount. So what they do is they have these kind of shareholders who have to vote to issue new currency, and they're getting this data from some feed somewhere, and they have an incentive to make this thing stable against the dollar, because otherwise the currency that their shareholders are in is not worth anything. There's no point in having a stable currency that isn't stable. It'd be worthless. So that's the Nubit solution. Another really imaginative proposal is Truthcoin. Some of the ideas from Truthcoin have gone into Ogre, which is making a big impression right now, which is designed as a prediction market. But what they try to do is to get people to effectively what they're doing is kind of proof of stake voting, but then with shelling clevers that I'll talk about in a minute. So so they have this kind of reputation system where if you get asked to settle various facts, and if you vote in line with the consensus, then you get rewarded. And if you vote against the consensus, then you get punished by losing your reputation token. And these reputation tokens are then tradable, right? So effectively they're kind of like a sort of a currency rather than reputation as we traditionally understand it. So that's a really interesting proposal that kind of takes a lot of the insights of Bitcoin, where you've got these miners who are motivated to try to maintain the value of the currency that they're mining, certainly. So they're motivated in that sense to do the right thing. But also they have kind of a direct incentive in that if they step out of line with the consensus, then they're gonna see their blocks get orphaned. So they then lose money. So I think that's kind of one of the most interesting ways that it could be done, but it remains to be seen whether this is going to work or whether it's going to be something that that can be exploited, to break the incentive scheme and in ways that'll end up giving you the wrong information.
The centralized solution needs more put the importance on the company's trust or this organization trust, and the decentralized solution is a system itself.
That's right.
Should trust the reputation system or how the punishment system, automatic punishment system is working with this kind of
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And one thing I would add is that when you use these systems in practice, you're not limited, or at least some of these don't exist yet, but at least in the future, hopefully, you won't be limited to just using one type of system. So you may well find that the way to maximize the security of what you're doing and minimize the risk of getting bad data is to actually combine these different models so that you have some coming in from maybe a reputation-based trusted system, some coming in from a sort of a fully sort of open participatory system. So what that allows you to do is that even if one of these models turns out to be bad, or if just some of the systems turn out to be bad, but other implementations turn out to be okay, then you may still be able to salvage the situation. So I think at least in the short term, well, we see which of these models are good and which have what kind of vulnerabilities. I think that mixing these together is going to be a very sensible way to go.
The application developer and then a smart contract should use both.
Where it's practical. I mean, it'll depend on the situation, but yeah.
So if it's work, which solution would be better, or there's a different target that we have is centralized oracle should be used by the government or the banks, or the decentralized oracle should be used by the casino web application or the insurance application. This kind of categorized difference.
That's right. So I think the two big differences are going to be cost and the kind of the security model. So it's probably going to be quite expensive to get information from a lot of people. If a lot of people are doing validation, but we don't know. I mean, it may be that you can come up with quite creative systems where you start by validating with a very small pool of users, and then you gradually kind of broaden that out if somebody sort of objects or something. So it may, but I suspect there'll be different kind of cost properties there, and then you have kind of different failure modes because in particular, if you're dealing with something with reputation, it's generally easier to do if you also have real world reputation. If you're relying on sort of particular companies, you probably want to know where those companies are and who is running them. And of course, that also means that those companies need to obey the law, right? Because if reality keys were to do something illegal, then of course at least the Japanese police know where we are and where to find us, and we would obey instructions of a court. So if you think that what you're doing is likely to attract attention from law enforcement, then probably reality keys is probably not for you. And clearly there's a lot of strength to these very, very kind of censorship resistant models in that sense, where if you've got nobody being identifiable, then that's clearly very strong. Against sort of government intervention, but also in some situations very strong against kind of coercion and threats. It may or may not be strong against bribery. I think that's something that we'll have to see.
So right now, reality case is a trusted third party.
Right.
But are you saying that maybe trustless model is better for OGA or prediction market?
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I mean, so I mean, kind of part of what Augur is this kind of design for having the participants in the system set up the markets. And like I say, it remains to be seen how well that will work. And it may work very successfully. The other thing, though, I would say is that it would certainly be possible to make something that had all the decentralized prediction market features of Augur, but used known data sources to settle contracts. And I think that if I was trying to use a prediction market on Ethereum or something in the short term, I would be much more confident in the model of known data sources than I would in the kind of the voting with the shelling stuff mechanisms, just because they're new and they're untested. Now it may turn out that in 3 to 5 years we see these things working and that incentive model works really well. And if we find that out, then it may be we don't in that kind of situation we wouldn't want this trusted model at all, or it may be, as I say, that we want to kind of blend them. So yeah, I think that kind of remains to be seen. I certainly think that there is room for a prediction market, sort of something doing a lot of the providing a lot of the functionality that Augur provides, but doing it using multiple trusted sources. I certainly think that would be a very useful thing to have. And a while back, talking to some of the Augur guys, it did sound like they might actually give that as an option to their users. I don't know if they still plan to do that.
Yeah, I would like to add that in the case of reality keys, so you can give keys on some simple metric that you can verify directly against, for example, Wikidata or other kind of stuff. But I think that in the future, particularly when Open Bazaar comes up, I think there will be a big market of what we call notary people that will offer the same service, but with direct human intervention.
Right.
And the only incentive that will be to not cheat against the system will be their own reputation. So I think for important contracts, we will better see trusted notary, maybe notary like we know today that are certified by the state, but also on other markets, just notary that are totally anonymous and that just derive their reputation from the coin they burnt and their past review.
Yeah, I certainly think that there will be notaries who are anonymous. I'm sure that's going to be a thing. There are a lot of use cases where that would be useful. I'm a little bit skeptical about doing reputation purely through proof of burn. I'm not quite sure. Having a hard time thinking of. It feels like you could have used proof of burn with traditional paper currency, right? You can make a big fire of money, and everybody can see you making a big fire of money it seems to me that if proof of burn was really, socially the thing that people were going to do, I think we'd have seen something a bit more like it before. I mean, in a sense, we've seen it in that people make big, expensive, wasteful buildings and things.
Yeah,
so maybe that's
I
the
think
traditional proof of
the
burn.
proof of burn will be only useful for new notary that want to bootstrap their reputation.
Yeah.
But I think you're right on the fact that once the notary start to have done some business and earn a real reputation among the community, then the proof of burn will not be so important after all.
Yeah, that's my suspicion. Although I'm not sure. I also do suspect that. So just thinking about kind of the pre-cryptocurrency world, people. What do people do to establish reputation apart from just doing business honestly? What they do is, they build big, expensive-looking bank buildings, right? That's kind of proof of burn. It's destroying, right? It's destroying wealth, turning you into something kind of useless, but that anybody can verify.
Yeah.
So I suppose that happens, but it continues to be kind of an impressive-looking asset, right? That they can then sell on. So then the other thing that they do is sometimes things like sort of charitable giving and stuff. Just thinking back to
charitable giving, it's proof of burn.
Well, that's right. So that's proof of burn. As long as you can be confident that the charity isn't in league with the person who's burning, So maybe that would be a better way that that community could contribute. In a sense, proof of burn is charitable because it's giving money to everybody who holds the currency. So I think that the pure proof of burn is probably not going to be the way people do things in the future on a big scale. But I think that something equivalent, some functional equivalent, will turn up that will be how we'll establish.
I think if I can make an analogy, is like. For example, if a new investor wants to invest in a company, will see if the founder spend money, for example, on patents, on a nice-looking website, if they did the real products, they will check things like that. They will not check if the founder just burned his money and then.
Right. Yeah.
So I think you're maybe right. Maybe the proof of burn will only be useful for bootstrapping the identity, but I think you're right. It will not. For after that, it will be like we were doing pre-currency.
But how about using the different method to make the reputation? Why should we ban? Because other method is like collateralized money as a reputation, and can be subsidized by somehow. That's why we should ban it, because in the actual world, make a good building was a charitable donation is not banned money.
Right, but I mean, I guess the reason for burning is that it's the kind of simplest, most direct, and most verifiable way of proving that you've used some resources. For example, if you give to a charity, then it's always possible that maybe the charity was giving some of the money back to you, or you had some kind of arrangement, right? Whereas proof of burn is absolutely verifiable if you can see some.
Maybe if you give to charity, you will get some subsidies from the state, so you give on one side and you get back to another. So you don't really know.
No. There's to build the reputation, that will be the good way to. Is there any other method to build a reputation from scratch?
I think you just start doing business. There's that too. But I think you you do what you've always done, and you operate and you do business and you do a good job, and I think that's how mostly that's how it's been done through the ages, and I think that's mostly how people continue to do it.
Somehow the Oracle had the incentive and then a punishment to report the actual the validated to the
Right.
blockchain.
And I also think that in the Oracle space, I think that gradually more established. I don't know if there'll be. I don't know what kind of business will go into this space. Whether it feels like something, say, Reuters would be good for. But I suspect that gradually we'll find more of our established real world brands are going to move into this space. But it'll take a long time until they really get involved in it. So I think that ultimately you won't see so much just purely Oracle companies. You'll see news organizations or banks or other trusted organizations, or people whose businesses trust, who have brands that span different fields. Because that's the thing about trust, is that if you gain trust in one area, that's useful. That also reinforces the trust that you gain in another area. I think ultimately that's what we'll see, is that we'll see real world, trusted brands. But it'll just take some time, because if I was Reuters at this point, I wouldn't go into this business, because who knows what's going to. Because the fact that you have a very strong reputation, a very strong brand, also means that you could lose that brand if you screwed up. So if you've still got a developing business like this, I'd be a little bit cautious. But ultimately, I think that's where we'll go.
So the next 10 years ago after or something, that Oracle or something like that.
Right. Oracle.
Yeah. So currently we are talking about the smart contracts mainly. So for people want to make the smart contracts, so that people build the decentralized application. What is the best? What is the advice for them to use? How to use Oracle for their business?
I think it really depends what you're doing. I mean,
many categories. Smart contracts.
That's right. I think that on Ethereum probably we will start providing feeds, and I'm sure a number of other people will start providing feeds that they can read from directly. And short term, I think that's probably the easiest thing, is just to pick some reasonably trustworthy, organizations that are providing data, and then combine, you use them in combination. Don't use just one, but use them in combination, so that just one getting hacked or getting bribed or getting coerced could not cause you a lot of trouble. I think that's the obvious short term thing to do. However, it's great to see all this experimentation, and obviously Augur is the one that everybody's got their eye on. And it might turn out that ultimately their model is just so good that we don't need, all these trusted parties.
How to use the various, different methods trusted, using the reality keys with Ethereum contracts, and then ODC and the Truth coin and the sharing coin, they use the same time. It's hard for the developers.
Yeah, well, I think in Ethereum anyway, I think what ultimately happens is that you read from a contract, right? So you don't necessarily have to worry how that data got into the contract, or at least you make that decision based on when you set up the contract. You have to decide which ones to use, but once you decided what to use, technically it sounds like it's all going to be the same. Unless you need to do what Augur does and actually build your own resolution mechanism into what you're building. But I think in most cases there's no need to bundle those together, So I think it should be fairly straightforward, actually.
Bundle together and then makes its own method to judge it.
I think all it takes is a fairly simple. I guess also there'll be some situations where you want to average, and some situations where you want to throw out outliers and then average, and some situations where you want to just take the most common choice, and so there'll be some a little bit of decision making to do there. But I think generally speaking, it's just a question of, okay, you've got some contracts you read data from, you take some process to decide how the disputes how they get resolved when they differ, but that's probably all you need to do.
What kind of data feeds are very popular right now?
Well, right now the stuff we've been seeing more interest in, which I thought would be sort of financial data and stuff, but nobody's interested in that's not quite true. But the interest we've had has been things like sort of the running data, and tracking people's GPSs and
Oh.
You know, so somebody wanted us to track their Withings internet connected scales, so track their weight, so that they could make a contract with themselves that if they lost weight, then they would lose their money, and if they would keep their money, and if they lost weight, then it would go to charity. And you know, these cases that just hadn't occurred to me. You know, so it's great when people just you know just call us up and say that they're interested in this data, and if there's an API that we can pull from, we pull from it, and give them whatever data they need. But on the other hand, I do think actually Ethereum will probably kind of set the financial sort of world on fire. You know, Ethereum, we're going to see a lot more. It's going to be so much easier to make these sort of financial contracts that I think we'll see a lot.
Is Augur the only prediction market, or do you know other prediction markets similar solutions?
If you read, I think Paul, who originally came up with Truthcoin, if you read his blog, he was saying that there were several different companies all building something on Truthcoin, that or you know building in different ways, who've been talking to him and all releasing about the same time. So it sounds like there's going to be a and they're also so Paul and some other guys who Roger Ver is backing are building, I think, something that's designed to be more faithful to the original Truthcoin concept, because Paul wasn't happy that that Augur were doing some things that he thought were unwise. So there are certainly going to be a number of choices, I think, based on that similar concept. I'd also like to see somebody without the shelling game stuff. So just to bring to kind of, I think I kind of skipped over the shelling concept, but there's this idea that that you have this consensus, and you punish people who fail to report in line with the consensus, and by doing that you can incentivize people to tell the truth. And that's the kind of the interesting innovation of Truthcoin and that Augur have tried to implement. And I think that's one very promising experiment. Another thing that I think would be worth trying would actually be more like just a pure proof of stake voting, where everybody has people have a stake in their system coming out with the right answers, and they just give their responses. So that lacks the kind of the error correction mechanism that sort of Augur and Truthcoin have, where everybody's supposed to be incentivized directly to give the right answer and to be punished for giving the wrong answer. But it also kind of lacks some of the interesting failure cases that that these kind of shelling systems have, where if you try hard enough, in theory, you can actually kind of capsize the whole thing and incentivize people and sort of punish people for giving the right answer and reward people for giving the wrong answer. You know? So I think those are both both worth following up, as well as, like I say, the reputed trusted party approach. So I think they all have different strengths and different weaknesses, and I'd like to see them all tried, and in a lot of cases probably all used in the same for the same ultimate contract.
Yeah. So let's just make the summary and for the new person for the first time to see the Oracle or don't know about the Oracle, then people, what is the best introduction point of the people who want to touch the Oracle?
Oh, if somebody wants to build something using an Oracle system, then they probably don't come at the introduction point is probably not that they want to use an Oracle. It's probably that they want to make a prediction market, or they want to make some application. And when they try to do that, they find they need some data from somewhere, and that's where they come into needing Oracle. So that's probably mostly the way it goes. If people would like to mess around with reality keys, then we've got some developer resources on our website. for some tools that we've made and some tools that you can look at and study from, and just please feel free to get in touch with us and let us know if you need some help or some suggestions to build what you're trying to build.
Yeah. So yeah, let's finish the panel. Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, thanks very much.
Right.